Love's the most important because love is something that we are to give as Christ followers, but it's something that we're to receive as Christ followers. In another passage in Corinthians, Paul, which everybody knows, you've heard it at a wedding. Even if you don't follow Jesus, you've probably been to a wedding and heard 1 Corinthians 13. That's the love passage where Paul says, if I do all these things, if I sell all my possessions and give them away, if I'm burned at the stake, but I have not love, then I'm a resounding gong, I'm a clanging cymbal. And he talked about in that passage, this gong and this cymbal were used in the theater. And so Paul's saying, you're fake. It's theatrics if you have not love. And then he goes on to describe love, and he says love is patient and kind. But he's not talking about love in that passage as something that we do. He's talking about it's something that we have. It's something that we possess. And so in Colossians, as he's talking about this Christ redeeming us and making us right with God, he's talking about this love that it's kind of empowered us to live in a culture where everything around us says, why believe in Jesus? Everything around us says engage in paganism. Everything around us says, serve and bow down to only the emperor. When everything around screams in contradiction to the message of the gospel, Paul's saying God has deposited into you a love that has made you right with him. God has deposited into you a love that where he says in Corinthians, if I don't have love, I'm nothing. Literally, that love is your identity. That without love, without the unconditional love of the Father, receiving that love in me, knowing that my standing with him and my identity on this earth comes from that love. Paul said, I'm nothing without that. And so love is everything to them because everything around them in that town that they lived in, Colossae, was completely counterproductive and counterintuitive to the gospel. So if they didn't have their identity rooted in the love of God, how could they love those who persecute them? How could they love the Romans who unfairly taxed and unjustly killed? How could they love those who preached heresy and tried to get them to turn away from Christ? How could they love the majority of people who didn't follow Jesus when they were a very small minority who did? Well, the way they could is because they've received it first. It was who they were, not just what they did.